Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today this isn't going to be a leak video, this is going to be a sort of news video but also kind of a discussion a little bit about specifically recent comments by Pete McTighe, re the release of The War Between Land and Sea, particularly internationally, because I find these comments kind of fascinating and they kind of underline something that I don't think we as a collective community have talked about enough. So I'm going to be diving right into it today, so if you do enjoy the video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated, and let's dive right in. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, Pete McTighe recently appeared at Gallifrey 1 in Los Angeles, the big Doctor Who convention, alongside the other cast and crew of The War Between. As you can see, there's Alexander Dadevrian, who plays Kurt Lieberheim. Now, of course, there is some irony to doing a panel about The War Between in a convention in a country where the show isn't officially released yet, and obviously he was asked about that. The series transmitted in December 2025 in the UK and is expected to be available on Disney Plus in 2026 soon, according to Pete McTighe at the Gallifrey 1 convention in Los Angeles. I attended and exclusively chronicled 8th of February 2026. Quote, "I hear that it's happening soon. I don't know, I don't have inside info, but all I've been told is that it's happening soon. So I would imagine, but you know, guys, just VPN it. Or buy the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray's got lots of cool stuff on it. The Blu-ray's got deleted scenes on it. It's got the documentary, the making of, which is really, really great. I'm hoping there's a longer cut of that coming because there's some really good footage. There's so much footage. We were shooting footage the whole time. It was great. And that behind-the-scenes video is available on the YouTube channel, and it is admittedly very interesting. They talk a little bit about some of the production issues that they had on the show, and I found it very interesting. But obviously, the core to this video, and I want to thank Cultbox for chronicling this exclusively, is Pete McTighe saying to a bunch of Americans, you know, the audience in which was receiving Doctor Who via Disney Plus, just VPN it. This is monumental, and it goes to show that the relationship between Disney, Doctor Who, the BBC, you know, I don't think it actually ended on the best of terms. Obviously, you've got representatives of the BBC saying, you know, Disney were great partners and all this sort of stuff, and I've delved into before in a video that I'm really proud of actually, talking about the Doctor Who Disney relationship in more detail and putting it on a timeline with Disney's changing in leadership and stuff, and I'm really proud of that video. But I think this goes to show just how much Doctor Who was probably being screwed over by Disney. Obviously, this is speculative on my end, and the difficulty with discussing this is, when people talk about Disney screwing over Doctor Who, a lot of people will just say, oh no, the reason why Doctor Who failed is because, you know, it was bad. It's bad television and whatever. And you can have that opinion, but if you do have that opinion, you are also allowed to criticise Disney as well. It's not an either-or situation. You know, you can say that, you know, there were creative decisions made by this team that were bad, whilst also acknowledging some of the bizarre things that have been going on with Disney's side of this relationship as well. Obviously, most recently with them delaying the release of The War Between Land and Sea to the point where its head, you know, producer and one of its, you know, head writers is basically saying, just VPN it, guys, just use a VPN and stream it via iPlayer that way. That's not the sign of a relationship that ended super cordially. Obviously, we've all suspected for the longest time that the reason why Ncuti Gatwa left is because basically Bad Wolf BBC were waiting on a Series 3 recommission or confirmation of whether they were going to be recommissioning or not, and obviously Disney dragged their feet on that, which technically, yes, is within the contract. But I think to many it had been pretty obvious for a pretty long time Disney weren't going to renew. So why didn't they just say that? Equally, some of the decisions even surrounding Doctor Who when it was released on Disney were just kind of bizarre. Like, the whole midnight release thing, I don't think that would have been made to the benefit of anyone other than Disney, frankly. I don't think that would have been BBC's suggestion, as the numbers clearly prove that there was a drop-off in viewers when that approach was implemented compared to when it wasn't. We have direct, you know, correlations to prove this. And I think you can kind of see this by the fact that they compromised with Season 2 on an 8 AM broadcast time, but I think it had been pretty obvious for a pretty long time. Disney did not particularly care about this deal for a while at least, presumably after the first season had aired, maybe even before that when Bob Iger reassumed the CEO position over at Disney and they shifted away from streaming as a focus. But I think this just says it all about the relationship. I find it so fascinating that this is something that like an actual, person involved in the show this closely has said. And I think that just speaks volumes. There was also just some of the bizarre ways that Disney would like promote Doctor Who. Like I remember them calling like Church on Ruby Road Special 4 and Joy to the World Special 5 on Disney Plus, implying they were part of the 60th trilogy. Like, they also just made it incredibly confusing for people to get, and obviously, on some level, you could say that it was difficult regardless, starting on an anniversary that was based on old stuff they didn't have, but also, it was their decision to do that, it was their decision to do that. The 60th was commissioned prior to Disney coming on board, and equally, you can also say, well, the stuff that was delivered wasn't to standard or whatever, if that's what you want to say. But at the end of the day, Disney signed off on all of it as well. So I think my point in this video is just to say that I hope whoever they get next treats Doctor Who with the respect that it deserves. Because obviously they will want another international partner, and I am not against it. But I think stuff like this just proves to me how little Disney actually gave a damn about this show and anything associated with it. They tried for season 1 for a little bit, but after that, nothing, and the fact that now they're basically delaying this release and not even telling, the people who are making it when it can appear on Disney Plus, I think just speaks volumes. And like I say, this is not to say Disney are entirely to blame for everything that went on with this era, but I think they probably are likely to blame for Ncuti Gatwa leaving, and obviously the stuff that we do know for definite, like them not releasing the War Between, the midnight release date, and stuff like that. And obviously, on the more speculative end, one has to wonder how much influence they did have over scripts. Obviously, we were assured at the beginning that they would have basically no insight into that, but obviously we have had multiple, instances where Russell has said, oh, Disney requested this change, and da-da-da. And of course, in some of those cases, they didn't have to enforce it, but it makes you wonder, where did Disney enforce their will over it? And again, that's not me trying to say that all of the creative decisions are Disney's fault, all the bad ones are Disney's fault. I'm not saying that. There were plenty of creative decisions that Russell definitely made on his own. I don't think that Disney particularly cared if the Rani or Omega or Sutekh were finale villains or anything like that. What I do think, though, is that they didn't really know what to do with this show, and I think whoever comes on next, obviously we talked yesterday about Netflix, needs to appreciate the show for the institution that it is. And I just get the sense that Disney was so big and so monolithic that they kind of just didn't care about it all that much, The fact that there isn't anything official on the War Between Land and Sea's release date, I feel like kind of says that out loud. And you could say, well, it didn't do well in the UK. Well, first of all, viewing figures wise, it actually did do pretty well. You might say, oh, well, the finale wasn't good. But even regardless of any of that, they are still obligated per contract to release it. So they probably will, but it doesn't look like they're going to anytime soon. And it just makes me wonder, what other hoops were this team having to jump through in order to appease Disney? Because this is only stuff that we can, see. Obviously, in this case, this is something McTighe directly said in public, and obviously things like the midnight stuff, that stuff that we know happened. But, that's only the stuff we know. What were they enforcing or requesting behind closed doors? You just don't know. And I've heard from many of you saying that, you didn't really see any promotion for it in your territories when Doctor Who was coming out. Maybe a little bit for the first season, but that was kind of it. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? I just kind of think, I don't think these partners were great. I don't think Disney was a great partner to it, and I do think that should be called out as much as the fact that, I do think Russell made mistakes as well with his creative decisions as well. I'm not going to say he didn't, but I think to pretend that Disney are blameless as well is not really fair either. Do you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I've had my rant. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you later.